Hey, welcome to Pens post game. The Pens weren't ready. We'll see if I'm ready to once again join you after some select games throughout the course of the 2024-25 season. Thanks again to the National Hockey Now YouTube and, of course, Penguins Hockey Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Let me get the name right. It's been a while. I'm a little bit rusty. Maybe I'm not ready, much like the home team was tonight. Rangers win it 6-0. Yeah, 6-0. Igor Shesterkin gets the shutout. Had 4 last year. He's holding out for more money. And, games like this aren't going to hurt that endeavor to try to shake down the Rangers a little bit more. I shouldn't put it that way. He's obviously a great goaltender, but tonight wasn't about the goaltending, at least not on the Rangers' end. As Tristan Jarry got bombed, the Rangers were the superior team to the Penguins throughout the maybe final, 45 minutes of this game. It was pretty one-sided. The Pens had some looks. They had some moments in the first period. But when you can't put a goal in, goals tend to change games, whether you score them or you don't. And after Alexis Lafreniere scored to make it 2-0 late in the first, it was all downhill from there, and not in a good way for your Penguins. The only bright side from tonight is that the Pens play again tomorrow night in Detroit at 8 p.m. as they bump that game back just an hour, not 2 hours, just an hour back to accommodate the Detroit Tigers home playoff game against the Cleveland Guardians. Maybe one day we'll have that problem in Pittsburgh, but that day is not today as well. Very doom and gloom to start, but hello and welcome to the broadcast. Other positives, I guess, if you want to look at it right away, they occurred before the opening face-off. The Penguins had a lovely tribute, of course, to Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau. 13 seconds of applause for Johnny Gaudreau, matching his uniform number. And speaking of numbers that are significant, Sidney Crosby began his 20th season all in a Penguins uniform. And Crosby, Malkin, and Letang started their 19th season together in some form or fashion. You'll recall Letang was called up in 2006-07. Malkin made his debut early that year as well. And those three have persevered. They're the longest tenured big three in North American major professional sports. I think they actually achieved that last year, but they extend their own personal record. But that's about it when it comes to the good stuff. Plenty of bad stuff to talk about tonight, and we're taking your comments as well. And we've got a few already in there, and JR sums it up saying that was ugly, and indeed it was. And we will get to your input in just a little bit. But first, I want to go over some notes from the game. And I would say number one takeaway for me is that looked like a preseason level of team cohesion for the Penguins, exemplified by that third goal. Over pursuit on the back check. No one taking the middle. The Rangers actually flubbed that play. Will Cooley was trying to shoot that puck going one-on-one against Marcus Pettersson, and instead he inadvertently drops it off. And right there was Philip Hedl to deposit it past Tristan Jarry, who made a couple of strong saves late, but by that time it was already too late. And he had been too porous early on. The Pens needed a great performance from him to stay relevant in this game throughout, and they didn't get anything close to that. Leading scorers for the Rangers tonight, just what you wanted to hear, Artemi Panarin had a couple of assists. And actually, he was one of just a couple of Rangers with multiple points. New York spread it around. And, last year's President's Trophy winners looking strong out of the gate on the road here tonight. Sam Carrick, Philip Hedl, Chris Kreider, our old friend, got another goal against the Penguins. Also, Vincent Trocheck, the Pittsburgher, on the board. On the Penn side of the box score, literally every Penguin who played tonight was a minus except for Rickard Rakell. So not even the likes of Sidney Crosby or Evgeny Malkin or Chris Letang were spared from that. And Rakell, I guess, gets the one reprieve out of everybody tonight. I mentioned Jarry gave up the 6 goals on 41 shots against. And looking at some of the more advanced metrics, courtesy of Natural Stat Trick, the Rangers had 66%, 2/3 of the high danger chances, 21-11, and 61% of the expected goals. They were expected to score. Take this stat with a grain of salt, but they were expected to score 4.45 goals. The Penguins 2.82. Pens hit a post. Matt Grzelcyk did that. Lars Eller was robbed a couple of times, but other than that, total Rangers domination. So we look ahead to tomorrow against Detroit because that's the only thing we can do. The Rangers also, by at least one person's count, had 10 odd man rushes, and you can't give the Rangers those kind of opportunities. They thrive off odd man rushes, but the Penguins were sloppy with the puck, And when they didn't have the puck, they didn't quite know where to go. So how bad did you miss hockey over the offseason? It's been nearly 6 months since we last saw the Pens in action. Well, this one really put that hunger for hockey to the test, didn't it? After we got past the first 10 or 15 minutes. Let's look at some comments. Why don't we? Let's vent a little bit. Christopher Weir says, how proud must Kyle Dubas be of taking the summer off now? Brutal decisions by this overrated exec. Doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. I would actually classify this summer as better than last summer in some ways, because obviously the Erik Karlsson deal doesn't appear to be working out. They needed it to work out last year, and now the window might be closed. I think the window was rapidly closing last year at this time, but without Karlsson helping the power play, in fact, he probably hurt the power play in terms of their cohesiveness, their ability to click. Then the Penguins squandered so many leads, so many points last year, and a lot of it with Karlsson on the ice. So easy to say that it didn't work out. At the time, I liked the trade. I think that's the biggest swing and miss for him in terms of the big home run swings. It is baseball season after all. But also Ryan Graves, borderline, according to Josh Yohe of The Athletic, borderline, he was even going to be in the opening night lineup as he was in and out of the lineup in the preseason, actually more in than out, which is rare for a veteran. So I think Mike Sullivan was looking for him to prove something. Not sure that he did. And Graves looks like an albatross at this point, too. This past offseason, I think Dubas actually snapped back to reality and realized that maybe it's time to stockpile some assets. And I think he did that. And he's acting like a man assuming he's going to have the job for a couple of years at this point, and hoping to at least smooth out the transition from the Crosby, Malkin, Letang era to whatever comes next for the Pens. It might just be the Crosby and the kids era, but that's not quite starting yet, is it? All right, 6658 says they played like a team trying to get their coach fired. And by the way, go to triblive.com. Seth Rorabaugh, good friend of mine, good journalist, long time on the Pens beat, had a one-on-one interview with Mike Sullivan, as most beat reporters do, get those before the season. I thought his was very revealing of Mike's thoughts on the criticisms of him and his so-called lack of ability or lack of willingness, either way, to change. And he lays out the reasons why he doesn't think that's the case. I thought it was quite fascinating. So if you want to take a read, settle in on that one, because it's some long quotes from Sully, but clearly he was confident and comfortable in delivering that message. I've never quite heard a self-defense from Sullivan quite that extensive. So I think that was valuable to read. I don't think they were trying to get their coach fired. I just think they were not playing very well. And in the end, giving up a couple of ugly goals, shorthanded goal, familiar theme, as they tied for the league lead in shorties against last year with Montreal. I believe that was. Phil Bork dropped that little nugget on the radio side of the broadcast, and good to hear Phil back on the air. That's how you know it's hockey season. Anyway, the Pens giving up that goal, and then Trocheck with the capper as all five Penguin skaters ended up below the goal line. Like I mentioned, over pursuit on the back check. That was a common theme tonight. A team that was looking like five individuals plus a goaltender out there. JR says one good thing that he has for us: the Pens don't play the Rangers again until game number 27. So that's what a couple of months away. And Christopher Weir follows up. What move has worked for Dubas? Eller, perhaps? Yeah, Eller's been all right. I think Eller has been as advertised, but ideally he's your fourth line center. We'll see where he ends up this year. Although tonight I did like what I saw from the Eller, McGroarty, and Puljujarvi line. That wasn't too bad. And let's pull up those lines. Actually have those for you. Give you a little bit of a TikTok feel here as I'll drop that behind me. If I can pull that up. There we go. Okay, well, that's the problem. I'll just sit right in the middle here, because look at the wingers on, the top line, especially Drew O'Connor, Anthony Beauvillier. This is not a serious contending team if you have those two as your left and right wingers flanking Sidney Crosby. But yeah, there is McGroarty and Eller. Fourth line was okay. I like what I saw from Cody Glass on the PK. The Penguins, as far as I can remember, let me look back, did not give up a power play goal tonight. No, they just gave up the shorthanded goal to Vincent Trocheck, as it's credited in the end. So he ends up with a couple of goals. Hayes, Achari, one of those whiffs for Kyle Dubas, clearly. as well. I think Dubas was quite forthright with the media this past week too in his availability after training camp, talking about how his third and fourth lines were too much in the mentality of just don't get scored on. No, you've got to contribute. So I think that third line tonight has a possibility, depending on the development of Rutger McGroarty, who I think was pretty good in his NHL debut. He's not going to be some high-flying goal scorer, but I think he can be a contributor. He can get in on the forecheck. Not the most fluid skater in the world, but he's a tenacious player. And I like the intangibles, things he's provided to Team USA at the junior level, especially at the high level of the junior international scene. So far, so good for him in his NHL debut after the trade coming over from the Winnipeg Jets organization. And on defense for the Pens, we saw it a couple of times tonight. Matt Grzelcyk isn't going to set the world on fire by any means. I think he's a pedestrian pickup, but perhaps he can be average at least. We saw Marcus Pettersson look rather foolish, getting toe dragged by Alexis Lafreniere on his goal in the first period. And Tristan Jarry, like I mentioned earlier, we could have used a save or two from him to keep things competitive, and did not. So all the Penguins' flaws on full display tonight. It was a rather brutal opening to the season, and the saving grace there is that we were all pretty hungry to watch some hockey. Maybe we won't be after tonight, but again, the Pens are back at it in less than 24 hours right now. Let's see any other comments. Uncle Deebs says, yes, Jarry made some saves, but man, those goals were awful. At the same time, this team wasn't ready at all, and hope it's just a bad game. Tristan Jarry did not leave a good taste in the mouths of many Penguins fans over the offseason, certainly, as he lost his job to Alex Nedeljkovic and really didn't seem that upset about it. And some interesting quotes in the preseason camp. I gave a few to Rob Rossi of The Athletic that I read, talking about how people don't quite understand what's going on. He's going to try to be more forthright in his interviews to give people an idea of what's going on. Maybe he's talking about injuries possibly that he has fought through or tried to fight through in the past. I don't really know what he meant there. Yeah, let's go to a happier image here. The big three getting back on the ice together. At least we have that. Are the Penguins just a legacy team right now? They're dangerously close to that. And we've had so many good years consecutively with the Penguins since 2006-07, the first year those three guys got together in a Penguins uniform on the same sheet of ice. So I really hesitate to rant and rave, because I know that we've been spoiled. But when you've been spoiled for so long, also you know what's good and what's bad. And what we saw tonight was certainly the latter of those two things. All right, what are you looking forward to this season? Let's try to spin it a little bit positively. Are you looking for some younger players like a Rutger McGroarty, like a Jack St. Ivany, perhaps to take a step here? I am excited about McGroarty, so I was happy to see him making the roster. I think that was more productive than some other guys they could have left up after the end of camp. So McGroarty for me was the easy choice for Sullivan and staff. I am still excited about the power play. I want to see what David Quinn can bring in an assistant coach's role. I was so tired of the Todd Reirden experience. So that's another item that I'm going to keep an eye on, and I remain at least cautiously bullish about. I would hesitate to say the power play can't be worse, because it can always be a little bit worse, I suppose. But maybe the worst power play in team history last year, you have to figure there's going to be at least some sort of a bounce, even a dead cat bounce. And hopefully they can get some momentum going in that area. Tonight, the Ofer, though. Ofer everything, of course, on a night when you get blanked, get shut out. But the Pens did go 0 for 3 on the power play and allowed a shorthanded chance. They struggled, a shorthanded goal, a couple of shorthanded chances. They struggled against the Rangers and their aggressive PK. So that might give teams a blueprint to continue to push the pace against the Penguins power play until they can get some confidence. And who knows if they ever will, because they sure didn't have it last year, and they never quite got it. I kept thinking it's only a matter of time for the Pens to get it together on the PP, and it just never happened. So hopefully Quinn can bring some new ideas there, and we can all look at least a power play that has some urgency, looks like it knows what it's doing, and get some more pucks on goal. It was a paucity of pucks on goal last year, and hesitation throughout, whether it be the top unit, the second unit. Remember, there was a mix and match situation going on Malkin and Letang were part of the second unit. The Pens were trying everything, and nothing seemed to work. So for this team to even threaten the playoffs, the power play's got to be good. The PK's got to be decent. Goaltending has to be good. And they've got to get some step-up play, even from someone like Anthony Beauvillier, who was a thorn in the Pens side at times with the New York Islanders. Islanders, a pesky team when Beauvillier was there, and they still are to some degree. But he was part of that identity, and he's still pretty young. So I think he'll add some speed and tenacity. So some of those offseason moves to get back to the Kyle Dubas thing, I think he shifted in a more positive direction this offseason, taking a swing in the trade for McGroarty. So I'm still withholding some judgment there. We do have just the one offseason and one full season with Dubas under our belt. And I think you need longer than that to judge general managers, especially one in a difficult situation. Let's not act like this is some easy spot for Dubas to come in and try to fix things. I'm not saying Hextall was the devil. I'm not that much of a pessimist about what he did or what he tried to do. I think he was forced, actually, to re-sign Malkin and Letang. He might not have wanted to do that. Maybe even that's why Jim Rutherford left a few years back as well. So these three guys, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, have some political power in the organization, clearly, as does Mike Sullivan with the new ownership group in Fenway Sports Group, too. So there's a lot going on there behind the scenes that we just don't know that much about. So I hesitate to really comment one way or the other. I do know Dubas has his hands full with this situation to try to retool on the fly, so to speak. But you look at the starting lineup tonight, like I mentioned, and it doesn't look like a team that will be a contender in the Eastern Conference or in the Metropolitan Division. Certainly. I almost said Atlantic Division. That'd have been a throwback. The Pens were once in the Atlantic Division, for those of you too young to remember, with Philadelphia, the two New York teams. Who else was in that division? I can't recall off the top of my head, but that was back in the 6th Division days. Those days are certainly long gone. I'm Matt Gajtka. This is Penguins Overtime, coming to you on both the National Hockey Now YouTube channel and the Pittsburgh Hockey Now Facebook page. So however you're joining me, thank you for joining, taking some YouTube comments. Mike Worley says the team is just non-threatening on offense. Nothing close and same issues on defense and odd man breaks. Yeah, tough combination, right? If you were at least creating chances and you were porous on the back end, you could say, okay, they're opening it up and they're just counting on their guys to score more than the other guys. That's what I thought we'd see last year, actually, was a more run and gun type of Pens team, but they couldn't get the front end of that right. the end you thought they might be able to get right, at least. And both things went poorly, and as a result, they missed the playoffs despite a late surge. Negative Pressure Productions asks, what happened to the PP? It literally didn't even look like the same formation from preseason. It looked like last season with no one near the net again for the most part. And we saw limited action with the big boys in the preseason, so I don't want to feed too much into the perception that told us anything. But, well, when the real bullets start flying, it's funny how you tend to revert back to old habits. So I think it's going to take more repetition. It's going to take more teaching moments for David Quinn and Mike Sullivan to try to team up and break these guys of their bad habits, which I think are primarily hesitancy, overpassing, excessive perimeter play. I'm not a big X's and O's guy necessarily. I am not an NHL coach, or else I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. But those are just general themes that I think through tactics you can improve by forcing some guys to get out of what they're used to doing, because what they're used to doing is producing increasingly terrible results on the power play. JR says, was it too much preseason time given to guys that they knew would get sent down, or are they just slow and old? I think you don't want to wear guys out in the preseason, right? I don't have a problem with taking a look at Wilkes-Barre guys in the preseason. In fact, I think NHL teams are increasingly downplaying the importance of exhibition games. Looks like we're going to drop down to 4 per team in the near future, at the very least at the next CBA. So maybe it was only natural that this team, with some older players, without many reps in the preseason, was going to come out and have a hard time adjusting to the speed of real NHL regular season play. I don't know, but, well, tonight should certainly tell them how far behind the pace that they are. Serious question, says Jeffrey Curry. Serious question, what is Dubas's plan? Like I said, I think his plan is to try to thread the needle, accumulate some assets here. I think he realized last year's idea didn't work, to try to load up and extend that championship window. So without saying it out loud, the Penguins aren't tanking, but they are taking a much more conservative approach and hoping that some of these assets pan out down the line. Hopefully, when Crosby is still in town playing out his final seasons, and he's on season 20 right now, I think Sid can make it to 25. I think he'd have to make it to 24 or 25 to truly see this franchise turn the corner again and look like it is on the upswing. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think in a year or two, you could say they're on the upswing. As of right now, I'd be surprised if at the end of the season, we're talking about a team that's threatening for a playoff spot. All right, what do we got here? 21 minutes in the books. I think that's about enough. Thank you so much for the input on Pens Overtime. Soft opener here. Didn't really hype it up too much. I wanted to make sure all the tech worked. So thanks to Dan Kingerski for his support there. I won't be able to be with you tomorrow, as far as I can tell, for that 8 o'clock start from Detroit. And I've got some other broadcast gigs this weekend. So next time I talk to you might be on Monday night. Looking ahead on the schedule, it's a 3-game trip for the Pens. Tomorrow at the Wings, home opener for Detroit. So they'll be fired up as they try to continue their very slow rebuild under GM Steve Yzerman. Then it's Toronto. That's on NHL Network. If you're not in the market, I am not in the market. So I will not be able to watch that one even if I wanted to on Saturday. 7 o'clock start against the Leafs. And then Monday at Montreal. That one's back on Sportsnet Pittsburgh and ESPN Plus nationwide. 7:30 start there. So I look forward to chatting with you next time. And hopefully we have more real, tangible positives to talk about because tonight was an absolute downer. One of the worst openers in recent memory. Typically, the Penguins at least come out on home ice and give us a bit of a show, but the only show being put on was by the Broadway Blue Shirts. 6-0 the final. That's it for me on Pens Overtime. I'm Matt Gajtka. Make sure to follow me. Let me flash up my social media. There we go. Take notes. Grab your iPhone, snap a photo of the screen to remember how to spell my last name. That is Gajtka. And you can find me on Twitter/X, on Facebook as well. Matt Gajtka Media there. Even on Instagram once in a while. No TikTok yet, even though I was dabbling in some of the backgrounds today. I hope that added a little bit of levity to what was a sad night in the end. All right, talk to you, like I said, hopefully on Monday after the Pens take on the Habs. Enjoy the next couple of games. And I'm hoping for everybody involved that there's at least a point or two in the standings to celebrate as well. See you later.